Alrighty, folks. Today we're going to talk about some beginner mindset tips to overcome fear and anxiety of going to the gym. I think there is definitely some initial trepidation about going to the gym, whether that's lifting weights, experiencing judgment from others, or any number of things that can either keep you from going to the gym or keep you from continuing to go to the gym. And so let's take a look at some of these anxieties and see if we can come out with some solutions. I'd really like to thank viewer Jason for his email. And if you all have any questions that you would like me to answer, strengthritualtube@gmail.com. And I'd love to get on here and answer some of your questions. So let's get into it. Jason says, first, going to the gym where one assumes that most everyone looks like an Olympic athlete puts you at risk for ridicule or humiliation. This is a very real concern for a lot of people stepping into the gym for the first time. 100%, whether it's Olympic athlete or bodybuilder or whatever, just jacked person in general. I think there is a perception that you go in there and you're going to be the most unfit person walking into that scenario. Whenever we go into the gym for the first time, I think it's pretty common to have a mindset about thinking about other people and what they are thinking about us. So the first thing we can do is reframe how we're thinking about the situation. Instead of viewing other gym members as intimidating or judgmental, remind yourself, most people are just focused on their workouts and their goals, and they're not there to judge or critique you. Yes, there are going to be some assholes who do that, but they are few and far between. You can begin telling yourself things like, everyone was a beginner at some point, and then also begin drawing on your own experiences from when you were a beginner at something. So if you're a beginner experiencing any kind of anxiety about judgment going into the gym, start small. Plan for times during the day when there are fewer gym members who are there. First thing in the morning, definitely not late at night, maybe middle of the day, lunchtime. Try getting there when there are fewer people around so that you can get comfortable with the environment and get comfortable with the equipment. I think a lot of the anxiety around being judged by others is how are they judging us when we're using a certain piece of equipment, which makes sense. We don't want to look like we're doing something wrong. However, if we sort of embrace a beginner mindset and come into each workout and each exercise like a beginner, just wanting to soak up information, wanting to learn, it's a lot easier to get past those feelings of not wanting to make a mistake because beginners make mistakes all the time. So we can carry that over into when we're intermediates and advanced athletes so that we don't become too rigid in our ways and we're open to learning new things. Similarly, this can help right up front in the beginning because if you embrace the fact that, yes, you will make a mistake, and sure, possibly people are going to judge you, eventually it will be okay with you because there is nothing wrong with making mistakes. Here's an exercise for you. Turn your thoughts inward and start asking yourself, what if other people were viewing you and actually judging you? You're going to ask yourself, would I be able to control their thoughts, feelings, and or behaviors? Absolutely not. Those are the things we absolutely cannot control. So if you go into the gym and you feel like other people are judging you, ask yourself, would that change what you wanted to do? Probably not. The only thing you can control in these situations is how you move towards your goals and values, regardless of what other people think. I mean, think about this. People care far less about us than what we actually think. And maybe in the scenario, focusing on what we think of ourselves, something that's in our control, might be more valuable than worrying about what other people think. So next time, just think about it. Even if other people were judging us as beginners in the gym, would it matter? Not really. What matters is keeping your eye on your goals and your deeper values. If you haven't outlined your values, check out one of my videos on that. But outline your values and move in that direction, regardless of the anxiety, regardless of the worry, because eventually you're not going to be a beginner. You're going to be an intermediate. And then if you encounter someone else who is a beginner and it's clear that they are and they ask for help, or you can tell that they feel judged, maybe you can offer them some comfort. Should they ask for it or should they need it immediately? All right, as for Jason's second point, so he points out that even for those of us who know how to tune out our perception of what other people are thinking, weightlifting is risky in the sense that as beginners who don't know what we're doing, we risk getting injured. So yeah, absolutely. There is a bit of a risk factor in engaging with weightlifting or honestly in anything in general. I will point out that I believe of the major sports and things, a bodybuilding style of training is one of the least injurious ways of training. So let's just go over some tips that I found that have sort of helped me mitigate injury risk in terms of training. So number one, we are going to want to focus on gradual progression. So as a beginner, a great way to focus on minimizing risk of injury is to focus on progression in complexity. So for me, when I think about this, a good way, especially if you're not going to get a coach and you're a person who likes to watch YouTube videos or learn on your own, I think starting with, heavy compound basics is the way generally people go. But I think for those people who don't have their technique dialed in or don't really have a good idea yet, but they know they want to get started in the gym, it's 100% okay to start on machines. It's 100% okay to start with dumbbells, because these are going to offer you less of a risk of injury than, let's say, something like a barbell back squat, a deadlift, or a bench press. Now, some could argue that this could sort of engender poor technique in those lifts once you sort of transition to them. But if you incorporate them gradually alongside of the machine movement and the dumbbell movements, I don't think you're going to run the risk of that. So I would say for me, if I was trying to help someone sort of master like the big three lifts, squat, bench, and dead, and they were a beginner, I think programmatically focusing on dumbbells and machines and incorporating one of the major lifts every couple of mesocycles is what I would do. So if you wanted to learn, squat, dead, and bench, and you wanted to engage in a bodybuilding style of training, I would incorporate one of them. Let's just say the squats. So we would incorporate squat, which we would train 1 to 2 times a week, along with other leg exercises. And then around that movement, we would have dumbbells and machines to fill in the rest of our volumes. And then after 1 to 2 mesocycles, after I've gotten comfortable with the squat, then I would switch out for something like a barbell bench press, and then take that squat and move it to something like a leg press or a hack squat or something like that. And then after that, swap the barbell bench for something like the deadlift, and place all of your other main movements around dumbbells and machines. And then gradually over the course of the year, you can learn to master sort of the compound basics, sort of piecemeal, one at a time, and then begin programming them together once you feel more comfortable with each individual movement. Now, why do I recommend this? I think this sort of piecemeal approach to the big movements is a great way to sort of limit and mitigate risk, especially if you are trying to learn all this on your own. Now, look, the best thing you could do is hire a coach, personal trainer, or someone who can offer you sort of critiques or comments on your form and teach you appropriate form up front. That's probably going to be one of your better investments. But if you're like me, honestly, you kind of just want to get started and maybe you don't have the cash to spend. So I would say focusing on creating training programs that allow you to sort of focus on complex movements and sort of build around them in terms of your volumes with things like dumbbells and machines so that you can focus on getting better at those. Now, don't get me wrong, dumbbells can be complex, but if you're following a bodybuilding style of training, I think dumbbells and machines are going to be your least injurious things. And so you're going to want to focus on your, barbell back squats, barbell bench press, and your deadlifts. And then, presumably, if you like a bodybuilding style of training, honestly, maybe you don't need a deadlift. Maybe you don't need to bench press with a barbell. Perhaps, so you get a really good SFR from squatting and or bench pressing, sure, throw those in. But if you don't get a great back stimulus with deadlifts, there's nothing saying that you have to program this in. These are just my thoughts on maybe how to mitigate a little bit of risk if you want to incorporate those movements into your program and you're a beginner. So as a bonus, another thing that I would recommend to any beginners, getting in there and wanting to sort of mitigate risk. So I think we sort of think about risk acutely, but we don't really think long-term with sort of overuse injuries. The best thing you can do is really start videoing your lifts. And once you have videoed those lifts, you can watch them back and you can begin critiquing your own form. And if you are an insightful individual, you can begin going, you know what, no, maybe I should hold the bar lower, like if it's on my back, or maybe, you know what, my bar path isn't so straight whenever I do high bar versus low bar, whatever the critique may be. If you begin videoing your lifts, not only can you make adjustments yourself, but then you can show that to a coach or someone who knows what they're doing. So start videoing your lifts so that you can mitigate sort of long-term risk by not doing movements incorrectly repeatedly. That's probably where some of my shoulder stuff comes from, where my low back stuff comes from. I didn't seek out assistance soon enough. And honestly, I probably didn't start videoing my lifts until, 5 or 6 years ago. And that would have cut my learning curve, my coach's learning curve a lot faster. So start videoing your lifts. So the final thing that Jason brings up, he brings up that there is the perceived risk of facing physical pain, or at least some discomfort, as we try to lift increasingly heavier weights. So this can be intimidating, especially for beginners who might equate discomfort with harm. So again, I think this goes back to managing stimulus and fatigue. And so we want to focus on gradual exposure, and from a psychological perspective, cultivating willingness or acceptance. So I think we've all heard this before, but you see the beginner come in who maybe hires a personal trainer, and that personal trainer might be new to training, and they might equate getting their client sore with getting results. So the beginner goes in, meets trainer, trainer puts them in through a workout that probably would be okay in terms of volume for like an intermediate or an advanced person, and then the beginner is laying on the floor in a puddle and probably doesn't come back because they have DOMs for weeks. That is something I have seen, and honestly, feedback from my early clients who experienced a lot of DOMs post-workout, that gave me good feedback that, hey, shit, maybe I need to pare back the amount of volumes that I am giving my clients because, especially as a beginner, you can get away with much fewer sets. And the truth is, you don't need to hurt yourself or kill yourself in the gym, especially as a beginner, to make progress. So I think something that beginners do is equating sort of extreme soreness or extreme stress with progress, and that's not necessarily the case. As a beginner, here's a tip. I would say start focusing on manageable volumes that get you a little bit sore. If it's your first time going into the gym, focusing on 1 to 2 good sets, getting to know the movement, that is going to be pretty effective right up front. Like if you've never lifted weights or been in the gym before, there is no reason to do 4, 5, and 6 sets of something. That's overkill and might even be counterproductive, especially if you find it hard to motivate. If you go in there and crush yourself and you don't feel like you can get to the gym the next day or the day after that or whatever, you're really working against your long-term goals. So to bring up more of that intimidation factor, I just sort of a metaphor of driving your car. So the first time you learn how to drive a car and the first time you go on the interstate, that's going to be pretty intimidating, especially depending on where you live. Like I couldn't have done that shit if I lived in LA or New York. I wouldn't be driving. I would still be a subway person. That's it. However, if you live in any other part of America or any other country, learning how to drive on the interstate is just something that you generally do. The first time you do it, there's going to be quite a bit of anxiety. You're going to be worried about other cars on the road. You're going to be worried about some of the other bigger cars on the road. You're going to be worried about signaling. Are you going too fast? And not a lot of these movements are going to be automated. So similarly, just like that, the intimidation in the gym is very much the same. The first time you enter the gym, there are going to be a lot of different people there, and you're not going to really know how fast to go. But just like the interstate, the more times you get on, the more times you get off, the more times you go in the gym, the more times you leave the gym, the less intimidating and the easier it is to just merge into your lane, merge into a piece of exercise equipment, whatever it is you're doing. It's just going to get easier with more repetitions. So in this way, we can focus on my last tip, and that is prioritize consistency over intensity. If I told you had to get on the interstate and go 90 to 130 miles an hour your first time, you would freak out. I would freak out. So we don't focus on that. We just focus consistently on getting onto the interstate and then getting off that first exit. And we do that for weeks and maybe even months at a time until we are fully comfortable merging on, getting into the gym, and doing what we need to do to get out that off-ramp or get out of the gym. And you can even, if you're getting to the gym, you can even focus on lighter weights, lower volumes, higher repetitions, if your issue is consistency. Once you're consistent, you can absolutely gradually increase the intensity. Now, whether that's through reps in reserve, RPE, whatever it is, that's for another video, doesn't matter. But focus on getting in and getting out first if you're having a hard time and you're feeling intimidated. Don't feel pressure to push yourself too hard in the beginning. It's more important to build a routine and gain confidence over time. All right, everybody, that's it for this episode. Big shout out to Jason. Thank you so much for the email. I really appreciate it. And sorry it took so long to get back to you. However, that email is now sort of linked to my phone, and so I will be answering emails a lot quicker. So if any of you all have emails and would like me to answer something, whether it's training or psychology related, or hopefully both, I would love to do that. Again, that's strengthritualtube@gmail.com. Would love to hear from you. Would love to answer some of your questions. If you like this video and it was helpful, give me a like, shoot me a comment, and I'll see you all next time.